Hi, you're on the Reddit Confessions channel. What you're about to hear isn't a story about love falling apart slowly. It's about how one sentence, just one, tore everything to pieces in an instant. The sound of her fork scratching the edge of the plate was louder than anything else in the room. Not the chatter, not the clinking glasses, not even the laughter echoing off the high ceilings. Just that slow, casual scraping, like she wasn't about to ruin me in front of 8 strangers. I watched her cut into her steak with a serenity I didn't recognize anymore. She looked calm, polished, even elegant, like someone who had already decided I didn't matter and was now performing for a different audience. Then came the question, what's your secret to keeping things stable at home with such a demanding role? It wasn't even directed at me, just tossed casually her way by the man across the table, who wore a smile that had never meant anything genuine. She didn't hesitate, not even a second. She smiled politely, tilted her head like she always did when she wanted to sound modest, and said, "Simple." I stopped expecting emotional depth. I chose consistency. Everyone laughed, except me. I blinked, once, then again. My hands stayed on the table, but I could feel them tingling, burning. The waiter passed by with another tray of wine, and I realized I hadn't said a single word in over 20 minutes. She kept eating, didn't look at me, didn't flinch. Like I wasn't even there. Like I was the silence she had referenced. I didn't push my chair back with any drama. I didn't make a face. I didn't mutter a comeback or break a glass for attention. I stood up slowly, picked up my coat, and walked straight out the front door. Not one person followed. Not her. Not anyone. Outside, the city looked different. Angrier, louder, more real. I walked past a line of valets, past a woman crying into her phone, past a man yelling at a parking meter, and I just kept walking, because if I stopped, I knew I would scream, or worse, I'd go back. That night, I didn't go home. That night, I remembered every time I'd swallowed my pride to keep the peace. That night, I realized peace had never actually been mine. The morning after I walked out, I expected at least a message. Not an apology, Greer had stopped doing those years ago, but some breadcrumb of acknowledgement. A simple, "Where are you?" would have been enough to trick my heart into believing it still mattered. Instead, I got nothing. No ping, no missed call, nothing from her except a forwarded email about a dry cleaning pickup I'd already handled. The subject line read, "Reminder," and somehow, that felt more humiliating than silence. I didn't sleep in the car again. I slept at a roadside motel just far enough from the city to feel like I was someone else. The bed smelled like bleach and old cigarettes, and the wall art was crooked. But it was the first place in a long time where I didn't feel like a background character in my own life. It wasn't until the next evening that my phone lit up with something that wasn't spam. It was from her. A single text. "You could have at least said goodbye." That was it. No reference to what she said at the table. No recognition of the way she publicly dismantled the man who spent over a decade folding laundry, running errands, canceling his own career ambitions so she could chase boardrooms and bigger job titles. Just a subtle jab cloaked in faux concern. I stared at it for 10 full minutes, typed a dozen drafts of a reply, deleted each one, but it wasn't the text that broke me, it was what followed. A few hours later, a message from an unknown number came through. No name, just an attached photo. In it, she was sitting at the same restaurant, same table, same wine glass, but this time, leaning into Trent's shoulder. His arm was around her. They both looked drunk, happy, free. I stared at that photo like it was evidence from a crime scene. And, in a way, it was. The timestamp was from the same night I walked out. I hadn't even cleared the block before she slid into someone else's gravity. For the first time in my life, I felt like an old receipt. Proof of purchase, long since discarded. I didn't respond, but I started packing. Because the next thing I found changed everything. I didn't pack with rage. I packed with precision, calm hands, slow breaths. There's something eerie about moving through a home you built with someone and realizing it's not yours anymore, not emotionally. The walls still carried our wedding photos, the fake plants still sat in the same corners, and the fridge still held my favorite mustard. But everything felt foreign now, like I'd walked into a replica of my own life. I wasn't even sure what I was packing for. I didn't have a plan, no destination, just a gut-deep instinct that staying meant shrinking further into whatever version of myself she could conveniently mock in public. I couldn't do that anymore. My dignity, what was left of it, needed air. That's when I found the envelope. It was tucked into the back of her desk drawer, beneath a stack of outdated HR documents and old lanyards from corporate retreats. It wasn't sealed, just a plain white envelope with my name scribbled on it in her handwriting, only slightly rushed, like she hadn't decided if she'd give it to me or not. Inside were 4 printed photos. One was of her and Trent, again, but this time on a rooftop somewhere. His hand was clearly around her waist, and they weren't posing for anyone. It was candid, intimate. Another showed her sitting on a hotel bed, dressed casually, laughing, not at the camera, at someone just out of frame. There was a wine bottle in the background. The timestamp was from 2 weeks ago. She'd told me she was at a leadership summit in Denver. I'd even made her a travel pack of snacks for the flight. The last 2 photos weren't of her at all. They were of me. One was from a backyard barbecue. I looked tired, sitting by the grill, holding a spatula and staring into space like I had nothing left in me. The other was worse. It was a screenshot of a text I'd sent her months ago. A long, clumsy message about how proud I was of her, even though I didn't feel like I fit into her world anymore. Someone had highlighted a sentence. "Maybe I'm not what you need anymore." Beneath it, in pen, she had written, "Finally, he gets it." I don't remember sitting down, but I woke up on the floor hours later, the envelope still in my hand. The worst part? I wasn't angry, I was relieved, because now I had proof, not just of betrayal, but of who she'd become when I wasn't looking. I spent the next morning staring at a blank wall, the kind of stare that isn't really about looking. It's about trying to convince yourself reality is still negotiable. But it wasn't, not anymore. The photos in that envelope didn't ask questions. They answered them. Every suspicion I had buried, every dismissive look I let slide, every time she turned her phone screen away from me, mid-scroll, the truth had been living in the open. I just didn't want to recognize its shape. I wasn't ready to confront her. I knew if I called, she'd weaponize my silence. If I asked questions, she'd spin answers into riddles. So I did what I never thought I would. I opened her laptop. She rarely logged out, and I knew the password anyway. It was still the name of her childhood dog, misspelled in a way that used to make us laugh. Her email was full of corporate clutter, calendar invites, flight confirmations, performance reviews. But then I found a folder titled Wellness, Innocent Enough. Until I opened it. Inside were logs, dates, locations, hotel names, short notes like, "Room 312, wine ready," or "Don't forget red tie, he likes that." Some had initials. One note just read, "Same story, no questions. Leave early." The earliest entry was from 8 months ago. I stopped breathing when I realized it lined up with the weekend of our anniversary, when she'd claimed her flight had been delayed and she was too exhausted to call. I remember sitting at our dinner table that night, eating takeout alone next to the candle I lit anyway, like a fool waiting for a ghost. I didn't rage, I didn't scream. I copied the folder to a flash drive and left everything exactly how I found it. She wouldn't know I'd seen it, not yet. That gave me time to process, time to plan. But when I walked past the bedroom and saw the note I'd left her 3 weeks ago, folded, untouched, still on the dresser where she'd tossed it, I realized something worse than betrayal had taken root. She didn't even care if I found out. I didn't leave that day. I didn't storm out with a suitcase or slam doors like in movies. That would have been too loud, too obvious. No, I stayed, quietly, observing, taking notes, mentally and emotionally. Every interaction, every glance, every moment that used to feel normal was now soaked in a different meaning. It's wild how quickly love can rot when you finally see where the cracks really are. The strangest thing, she didn't notice a change in me at all. She still made herself coffee in the morning without asking if I wanted any. Still hummed while getting ready like she had no idea she was being watched through a lens sharpened by disbelief. Still left her phone face down on the counter like it wasn't buzzing with pieces of her other life. Then came the scarf. It sounds stupid, I know. A scarf. But it was the one I bought her last winter from a handmade craft market we stumbled upon during a freezing afternoon walk. She had wrapped it around her like it was priceless. She said it made her feel seen. That word stuck with me. The night I found the scarf on the passenger seat of her car, tangled with a tie that didn't belong to me, I didn't even feel anger. I just picked it up, held it to my face, and for a second I wondered if betrayal had a scent. It didn't. It just smelled like her perfume, the one I used to adore but now made my skin crawl. I left the scarf right where it was. I wanted her to find it there, untouched, so she'd know I knew. But even then she said nothing. Instead, she came home late the next evening, claimed a client meeting had run long, and handed me a brown paper bag with a half-eaten croissant inside. She said, "Thought you'd like this," and kissed my cheek without looking at me. I stood there holding that bag like it was a loaded weapon. She had no idea how far I'd already drifted from her. No idea that I had seen every mask she wore and finally stopped lying to myself. And still, she smiled. I wasn't supposed to be home that night. She made that clear. A week earlier, she reminded me twice, once in person, once via text, that I had your friend thing on Thursday. But I didn't. That meetup had been canceled, and I never told her. Something told me not to. So, when I walked through the door at 6:42 p.m. and smelled rosemary chicken roasting in the oven, her specialty, a dish she hadn't cooked for us in over a year, I knew immediately. That dinner wasn't meant for me. The dining table was already set. Napkins folded neatly, wine breathing in 2 glasses, candles flickering like they had something to prove. It was intimate, intentional, designed for someone who wasn't me. I stood there silently, listening for her footsteps. She didn't hear the door. Music played from the kitchen speaker, soft jazz, the kind she used to say made her feel grown up. Then she walked in. Her face dropped. Not in guilt, no, it was annoyance, like I was interrupting something scripted. "Oh," she said, just that, 1 syllable, flat. I asked nothing. I didn't accuse. I simply looked around, then looked at her. My silence said everything, and she hated that. She tried to pivot, muttering something about a team dinner that fell through, but even she didn't believe herself. Then her phone buzzed. She glanced at it too fast, guilty fast. It lit up on the counter just long enough for me to see the preview. 5 minutes away. Should I park down the block like last time? I didn't flinch. I didn't react. I simply walked over, picked up both wine glasses, poured them down the sink one by one, and turned off the oven. She didn't say a word, just stood there, arms crossed, breathing shallow. "Cancel it," I said. She blinked. "What?" "Whatever this is. Whoever he is. Cancel it." There was a pause, then laughter. Quiet at first, then sharp. And in that laugh was everything she'd been hiding: contempt, distance, freedom. "I don't think you get to make demands anymore," she said, voice low. She was right, so I said nothing, grabbed my keys, and walked out into the night, leaving her perfect dinner untouched on a table meant for a stranger. I didn't sleep that night, not in the car, not on a couch, nowhere. I just drove, not even far, just aimlessly through side streets and forgotten neighborhoods where no one knew my name. I ended up in the parking lot of a grocery store we used to shop at years ago when things still felt real. I watched the fluorescent lights flicker above the carts as I asked myself a question I should have asked long ago. When did I stop mattering to her? At some point, my phone buzzed. It was my sister, Hannah. She never calls at night unless something's wrong. I almost ignored it, but then I remembered she was the only one who ever saw through Greer's act without needing evidence. I answered and said nothing. She didn't start with a greeting, just a calm, steady voice. "Are you safe?" That word. Safe. Not okay, not where are you, but safe, like she already knew I wasn't. I broke, everything I'd been holding in, the silence, the resentment, the humiliations. I let it all out in fragments. I didn't even realize how much I needed to be heard until I had someone actually listening. After a long pause, she asked me the one question that shattered the dam. "Do you even want her back?" I couldn't answer, because deep down, I didn't know. I wasn't sure if I wanted the version of her I'd built in my mind, or if I was just afraid to let go of the comfort of being someone's second priority. "You don't have to make a decision tonight," Hannah said, "but stop giving her space to rewrite the truth while you're still trying to understand it." That stuck with me. I drove back to the house the next morning. The wine glasses were gone, the table cleared, the candles in the sink. She was sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone like nothing had happened. Not even a nod when I walked in. No apology, no explanation. It was like the night before had been an error she'd already erased from her mental calendar. But I hadn't. I was done waiting for her to ask the right questions. So I left something she couldn't ignore. I didn't leave with shouting. There was no suitcase dragging, no dramatic confrontation. Just one quiet moment where I stood in the hallway with a manila envelope in my hand and peace in my chest. I'd filled it with the photos, the hotel logs, and a single note that said, "I stopped being the villain in your story the day I stopped playing the fool in mine." She never saw me place it on the kitchen counter. I didn't want her to. I didn't want another argument, another performance. I wanted space, not the kind she always begged for when she had something to hide, but the kind that felt like fresh air after breathing smoke for too long. I moved out the next day. It wasn't easy. For a few days, I wandered like a ghost. I missed the shape of routines more than the person I shared them with. But then, things started to shift. I got a message from Hannah. She'd found a small rental near the coast and said it was mine for the next 2 months. No strings. The first night I slept there, I woke up before sunrise, made myself black coffee, and listened to the waves. No distractions, no lies, just sound and silence that belonged to me. Weeks passed. Greer never responded. Not a call, not a text. I don't know if it was guilt or pride, or maybe the relief of not needing to pretend anymore, but her silence was the final gift. It let me rebuild without dragging the past behind me. Last week I started writing again. Nothing fancy, just old stories I'd shelved years ago. One of them made me laugh out loud, not a bitter laugh, a real one, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel like someone's background character. I felt like me again. Now it's your turn. In the comments, share a moment from history, personal or global, that changed someone's path forever. Something real, something unforgettable. And don't forget to subscribe to Reddit Confessions, where every story is a reminder that endings can still be beginnings.